Okay.
All right, that should work. All right, hold on one second. Let me just get some coffee here. All right, hey folks, I'm Muttle and I'm here with Brian of London, Brian John Thomas, and Brian, I thought maybe we'll call this because you and I are both putting out stuff all week long. This could be like the week in review. What has happened from an Israel focus center? That's what I had in my head. What do you think of that?
That's the way I see this going too. I very much a review, look back, and a couple of little bits from the future.
Right. So I mean, we both put out cool stuff, but for the folks watching this, if you wanna just catch up on everything you missed, if you're actually out there living your lives during the course of the week instead of like Brian of London and myself just riveted to the news and what happens next, we're doing that for you so you can just go ahead and live your lives.
Exactly. It's that
Exactly.
review, and I like the idea that you're putting it out now on your audio feed on your iTunes
Y-
subscription because that's my
yes.
favorite.
Really.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've always
we're
been
such
much more
good-looking
audio.
guys. I mean, it lends itself across that, so they can, if well, we'll tell them where to find this at the
Every
end, all the
channel.
different places, every channel, with complete global news operation here. I mean, but you know what? People think it's funny, but this is where people are getting their news. People are realizing. Well, I mean, the one thing we've seen this year is the complete death of mainstream media and two guys that are on the ground here in Israel. You're in Tel Aviv. I'm a West Bank settler here in the hills of Judea. We've got the whole place covered, I think.
That's right. But it's this very much alternative sources are now becoming much more useful. And I mean, we can launch into our first story, which is this morning. We wake up and we hear sort of reports out of Syria that somebody has bombed something in Syria, and of course,
Again.
immediately it's Israel. Yeah, and it's and the first reports I see, the first tweets and the first sketchy reports, all come from Syrian sources and say something has been blown up at Damascus International Airport. I'm thinking, why would anybody blow up anything at a civilian international airport? And then
Why
it's
would the United
Israel.
States, or why would the United States or Israel? Now, I love how Israel does this. Israel's like, might have been us, might not have been us.
Yeah,
They're
but
pretty cool about it.
but there's definitely video and pictures of flames and erupting. So then I ask two questions. One, how close are these flames and eruptions to the real Damascus airport? And so I go onto my little app on my phone, my flight radar app, and I look at the arrivals and departures board for Syrian Damascus airport this morning at 7:45. And you know what? Full and no delays. I mean, just
Really?
planes coming in and going and taking off, and it seems normal. Everything's scheduled. Everything's Amman and Jordan and flights to all over the place. So I'm thinking,
What airline? I think is it United that flies in? What airlines fly in and out of
well,
Syria?
it's working normally, and so that's a bit strange. So we're not being told by the mainstream what's going on. We're
I,
not being told by the mainstream what's going on.
all right,
And
but you could find it on your app. So I mean, what's going on is clear. Israel has a couple red lines. We
yeah,
have, and I spoke about this. There's a YouTuber, Sticks and Hammer 666, who is actually a brilliant guy. I found him kind of recently, and check out his channel if you get a chance. But he was pretty negative about Israel because Israel bombed Syria last week, and we were upfront with that because what might have really been an errant shell landed in the Golan Heights from Syria, from the pro-Assad rebels.
yeah,
And Israel has these red lines. Red line number one is you can have your civil war, but anything that comes over the border into Israel, we are not letting this spill over. Anything that comes over here, we're going to respond to, and we're going to respond quickly. And the other thing is you can't use Syria to ship your weapons, Iran, to Hezbollah in Lebanon. You can't drive them overland. across there. And if we know that there are weapons that are bound to one of our enemies to be used against us, we're going to blow that up. So that's what I think happened. There was probably a munitions dump near the airport. We have no interest in bombing the Damascus airport. We have an interest in not letting the shit show that is in Syria spill over into Israel.
Correct. And I mean, that's the big deal, is that this is whatever happened up there on the Golan Heights, it was a local thing. I mean, it's not a strategic decision to fire back. Something arrives on our side. I've been up there, actually. I was up there in November, and specifically, we heard this, like, we were looking at one of the memorials, one of the places where there's some old tanks, not Harbin Tal, actually, just near there. And I heard this crump, and I thought, no, that's on our side. Something landed on our side. Sure enough, half an hour later on Twitter, I see the somebody saying, yes, something landed on our side of the fence. We return fire. And it's automatic. It's not like a strategic decision that goes to the prime minister. Oh, do we fire back? No, something lands, we fire back. Doesn't matter who it came from.
If you send anything over the border other than good wishes, we're going
exactly. And that's how it should be. And in fact, these systems are almost semi-automatic. The same system that tells us where a mortar or a rocket is going to land also tells us the point of origin. And so the tanks that are sitting up there and the artillery that's sitting up there can just immediately say, okay, this is where it came from. This is who shot it. You're going to get it back.
And often that spot is a crater before the missile lands in Israel.
It's pretty quick. And that leads me to another thing, which is that also there's this amazing story that sort of got out of control that came from the Times of Israel. So the former defense minister, who had stopped being the defense minister in June of last year, he gave a long, rambly sort of interview type thing in front of an audience, which was videotaped, and it was in Hebrew. And he spoke for 40 minutes. And during that 40 minutes, he made one kind of throwaway comment, which was that the only time that we, as far as we know, that ISIS has directly taken a shot at Israel was last year. And some ISIS guys shot an Israeli patrol. The Israeli patrol returned fire, and then the Air Force was called in. And it seems to have ended with one of ISIS's famous Toyota trucks being blown up and 4 dead. That was told as a story by this former defense minister, Moshe Yaalon. And he just then said, and ISIS apologized. That's it. And suddenly,
we're so very sorry.
We're very, very sorry. And he doesn't say how they apologized. And remember, he wasn't
shukran.
Yeah, he left office in May 2016. So and this happened in November. So he wasn't even the defense minister. So it doesn't say how they said sorry. But the Times of Israel tries to make this out like some kind of secret communication with a terrorist group.
Right.
And
they send flowers.
Yeah, they are the only ones. And remember, just run the actions through again. Some guys shoot at the IDF. The IDF shoots back. The planes come in. The guys are gone. And ISIS apologized to us for starting it. So this then, the only newspaper in Israel, calling it a newspaper is a bit of a reach, but the only site in Israel that remarks on this is the Times of Israel. Haaretz, J-Post, Ynet, none of them picked this story up. But then what happens is this story goes through to Russia Today and to The Independent, and it becomes evidence that Israel controls ISIS. Oh, look, ISIS are apologizing. ISIS never attacked Israel. And so, and Israel are helping ISIS. The whole story mutates in this right-wing, what some would call the alt-right, that part of the internet. Take it. Their conspiratorial minds take this as some kind of evidence that something that really isn't there. And it's quite fun to watch the genesis, but you have to wonder what made Times of Israel blow this story up. And then the other part I love of the way the conspiracy sites work is that because only Times of Israel wrote about it, the news is suppressed. That means it's true. I love that part. No, the only reason Times of Israel wrote about it is because it's a non-story that they kind of made up by like listening with strange ears. That's and that goes out into the world, and it becomes another piece in the puzzle for those people who want to say Israel's controlling everything and the Zionists control everything. This becomes another one of their foundational stories.
Everything that's bad, you know.
Yeah.
ISIS, Hollywood, gluten, like that's us.
Yeah, too much sugar in your diet. That's exactly what this, and it's a nice little case study of twisting and turning, and this comes back at me. I follow a lot of the sort of pro-Trump and those elements, so they pick this up and they're confused because they genuinely don't know, because there genuinely are so few real sources for them to look at who I would say are operating honestly most of the time. There are so few of those.
And there's actually, there's this leaning towards blaming Israel that's out there, that, these terms, right, left, alt-right, liberal, they are really breaking down now. And it's really one of the things that I think the internet has, one of the things the internet has caused is this ability to live in your little fractured bubble and not get anything out of there. You have to really try. I make a big attempt to read different types of media, that I'll read Breitbart and I'll read Politico and I'll read the New York Times, and I'll go down the rabbit hole a little bit with these, YouTubers that tend to be a little bit more conspiracy oriented.
Exactly. Me too. And you get a lot of useful stuff from there, but then they go off.
Brian, 1 second.
And they're not bad
My
people.
dog is trying to get in here. Hold on.
Dog.
May have to cut that piece out.
Okay. Yeah, they're not bad people, and they might express things that come from in the end, nearly all of this conspiratorial stuff that's anti-Israel comes from the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, that famous forgery. It all traces back to that. And as soon as you see the genesis of that in some people's minds, you can't really blame them for having been taken in by such a well-spread lie. So you have to work around it. You have to try and poke them with sort of inconvenient facts that say, look, how can you believe this when it's such an outlandish thing to think that Israel, and they come with their greater Israel stuff, and Syria, does Israel want to encompass Syria and Jordan? It's unrealistic, and there's really nobody pushing for that has any kind of real political power or any hope of power. So we just sit here and know what we want.
Of truth in that. We had the 100th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration, took this area that was traditionally the homeland of the Jewish people and said, like, hey, these people should have it back. They're the ones who are the rightful owners of it. And then when it wasn't expedient after that, they're like, well, we're going to have to give half of this, everything on the other side, everything Transjordan, to this Bedouin king from Saudi Arabia. And so we lost half of our lands, from and we had from the river to the sea.
Correct.
And I, for one, do believe that there's nobody there with a greater claim to sovereignty than the Jewish people.
Absolutely. But you and I both know that it would be very popular if we could draw that line on the Jordan today and say, the other side, that's whatever country you want to call it, and we'll be happy behind this river. But you're right. Yeah, the claim is pretty much as strong here and where you are as it is across further out beyond Jordan to Transjordan. But there's almost no significant desire to want to take that. We just wouldn't do it. There's certainly no way that an army would go rolling off to the tip of Jordan in the northeast.
No, and
it's unthinkable. We could
have in 1967. We could have. We had no interest in it.
We could have taken Cairo.
Right.
Sharon was poised to do it. He was asking, "Can I drive to Cairo?" Right. And the answer came back, "No, just don't drive to Cairo." But he wanted to. I've read his book. I mean, he was sitting there. He was the other side of the Suez Canal. He had a bridgehead, and he knew there was not much between him and Cairo.
Right. Hey, man, those pyramids are a tourism,
We could do a good business there.
We could, and that's what we're really
and we built them,
interested in.
apparently. I mean, yeah.
It's funny. I lived in Japan for a couple years. I taught English in Japan with my wife after college. And at the time I was there, it made big news that the number one book being sold in the subway system, the Japanese would buy these books and read them on the subway. The number one book was The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And Jews were up in arms about that, how could the Japanese be such a racist society? But I spoke with all these Japanese people about it, and they first of all, they believed everything that was in there.
Yeah.
But secondly, they saw it as a good thing. Like, oh, you control Hollywood. How you do that? You control the banks. How do you do that? That was the most racist, kind of. I guess you're not allowed to use Asian accents at all. But they were really impressed. They thought like, wow, these Jews, they've got their act together. They control Hollywood. They control the international banking system. They control, and I had to kind of break it to them that, no, I don't get checks from the Protocols of Elders of Zion Fund somewhere for doing this. We are actually doing this because we believe it, Brian. We believe in this. We are here not as, news shills. We're not making money off of this. We're sharing what we're seeing here on the ground.
Correct. So what were the other stories that caught your eye?
Well, we have this hunger strike going. It's in week 2 of the Palestinian hunger strike, and apparently they're getting really hungry.
Okay.
So
sorry.
Israel controls 6,500. There are 6,500 Palestinians in Israeli jails right now. Most of them are in there for terror related. They've been convicted of crimes. You see it every day here. You see a Palestinian taking a knife, stabbing, but one of the things they're complaining about is like, what? Someone who drove a terrorist to a terrorist act? Why is that a crime? That's also a crime. Any involvement in that. And by the way, if you're a part of a terrorist organization, Israel's going to want to talk to you for a little bit. So some of the prisoners in there are under what's called, they're being detained. So they haven't been charged yet. We just know that their best friend went and committed an act of terror. And by the way, this is used on Jews also. The fire in Duma, where suspected Jewish arsons came in and torched a house with a Palestinian family in it. They did a year-long investigation, and they came up with, this is who we think is the one who's responsible for this after our investigation, and that person is arrested for 6 months. Israel can hold you under just a detention without charges. Now, that's not illegal by international law. It certainly doesn't happen in America because America isn't under this terrorist threat. It has these giant oceans on both sides. They're starting to see it happen more. I worry what will happen when inevitably there is another 9/11. I hope it's not on Donald Trump's watch because I don't share your enthusiasm for him, and I think that would be something that would throw the liberties that the United States holds so dear out the window completely. But here, in response to this, about 1,200 of these Palestinians have gone on the Freudian slip, on a hunger strike. They're led by Marwan Barghouti, which we talked about in the last episode, who is called the Palestinian Mandela. right? Like Nelson
Just
Mandela.
absolutely ridiculous.
This is a guy that ran the terrorist arm of the Palestinian Authority. He's responsible for several large terror attacks. He was convicted of 5 counts of murder in an Israeli civilian court. He is serving 5 consecutive life sentences. And apparently, 2 weeks without eating has really affected his health. And they're worried about him. What will happen if something dies? And I thought Israel had a great response to this. They were like, he's free to eat something,
Yeah,
like if
exactly.
his health is deteriorating. But they know how to get at Jews, right?
Yeah.
How do you really get at Jews?
Food.
Food, right? Please, you got to let us feed you. You got to eat a little something. That's you're not going to eat. That's how you hurt us. That's going to do it. But I don't know how long. I bet there's a lot more of them falling out here. I don't think this hunger strike's going to go for a long time. And
Well, will it stay until Trump gets here? That's the question.
So that's the other big story is Donald Trump has announced a trip here to Israel. Well, 2 things. One is next week, on the day after Yom Ha'atzmaut, on the day after Israel's 69th birthday, Mahmoud Abbas, the chief terrorist of the terrorist organization Fatah, will be flying and meeting with Donald Trump at the White House.
Now, it might be the day after Yom Ha'atzmaut, but it's also more than 100 days after Donald Trump's been in the office. So, there's still a hell of a long gap between, he was not given the kind of respect that was afforded by the previous incumbent of that office.
Well, I think it's also, it's a different time, when he was actually Obama's first phone call from the Oval Office was to Abbas.
That's right.
And Donald Trump is definitely looking at Abbas as more of like a mayor of Ramallah than a leader of a nation. And he did want to talk to Bibi first. They had that press conference together. I thought it was a little embarrassing that our Prime Minister of Israel spoke English better than the American president, but that's
it's just different English. It's not better. It's different.
It's better.
Differently English.
It's very, very better. So this is the thing. So there's 2 things that have been announced. Abbas is coming to the White House, and then at the end of May, Donald Trump is coming here to Israel. Some people say for Yom Yerushalayim, the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. Now,
very big event for us.
Very big event, 50 years. And this is like one of those things where people are, say like, well, you're occupying someone else at a certain point.
No.
We've been here at a certain point.
Reunification. I say this to people all the time. Are you in East Berlin or are you in West Berlin? And they look at me like I'm mad. There's no East Berlin and there's no West Berlin. I said, well, of course there's no East Berlin. It was for a few years, after 1950, 53 was it, the partition? And then it was done away with in the late 80s. But for that period, are you going to, for that small number of years, and it's exactly the same here, from 48 to 67, there was for the very first time in its history a division. Are you going to, in your mind, think that it should be divided for the rest of time? Of course not. It's nonsense. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, the problem is the Palestinians want to claim it as a capital. Now, according to Israeli news this morning, Donald Trump is planning on doing a couple things when he comes in May. And they're saying this is now all kind of fitting together. What is he going to be talking to Abbas about? This is what he's going to be telling Abbas, that he's going to, one, because you have to give a little bit to both sides. One is he's going to make an announcement and say, as president from Jerusalem, that Jerusalem is the United Jerusalem is the capital of the state of Israel. And he's going to be recognizing that as a president. He's still, now, what do you have to take in order to do that? He's not going to move the embassy. Not going to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, but the United States will officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel.
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of that's pretty much the same thing. Really, that the point of moving the embassy is to say your capital is here. The physical location of the, maybe I'm going to sound like Trump backtracking, but the physical location is a detail. The recognition, the absolute, this is it. We're going to change the CIA fact book website now and say the capital of Israel, recognized by America, is. That's a big deal.
So see, I don't know about that, Brian, because I'm thinking like here in Israel, and we have our symbolic stuff. There's tons of things around here. The symbolic victories, though, aren't the main victories. Right now, out the studio window, I don't know if the people could hear it. I hear construction.
Yeah,
right here in Tacoma.
I've got construction. I'm in Netanya today. Big construction, but it's construction where you are matters.
Those are the real victories that matter. The victories that, the fact that Donald Trump recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, that doesn't change anything in my book. What's important is the real. Now, he's also, they're saying, going to call for the establishment of a Palestinian state. That's going to be the bone he throws to the Palestinians. And this is what depends.
It always depends on what conditions come with that. Because, look, Americans have been saying that, unfortunately, this genie was let out of the bottle a long time ago. And I guess you and I are both post two-state, and we're post Green Line. I mean, this is the bit that left and the kind of the intelligentsia in Tel Aviv haven't come around to. Because I meet them all the time and they say, oh, we just should build a wall and hide behind it. Just build a wall, hide behind. And they don't understand that Green Line never really should have been a political football. It shouldn't have been. We should have. It doesn't work. There isn't going to be a solution of separation, as far as I can see, that involves calling that Green Line a border. It's not going to happen.
There are 350,000 people that are living here in Judea and Samaria, what's called the West Bank. And you just can't move that many people without doing it like Assad did. You can't. That's the only way to get that amount of people out of here. You saw with Amona earlier this year, you had 41 families that they had to in caravans that they had to move out, and it was
for no good reason. And that's the other thing, for no good reason.
But it wasn't easy. 41 families. And you say 41 families, those are not, there is something about the fact that moving adults is far easier than moving children,
Yes.
Good luck getting my kids out of here.
No.
I can't do it myself, but
so it remains to be seen, there's still, there's so much we don't know about what's coming, but
this is what scared me about Trump, and you and I have been disagreeing about this since well before the election. The one thing that people around here, the pro-Trumpers in Israel say is, well, he's going to be great for Israel. He's going to be fantastic. He's going to be the best president for Israel. We've had 8 years of Obama, and Obama was just constantly rude and constantly, he made Bibi leave through the back door. Again, all of these things are symbolic. I look at one number. How many new homes did we build in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria?
Yeah, and that was very low.
It was 13,000.
That's the number. Yeah, and that's the number.
It was actually more than was built during Bush.
Yeah. But again, remember, Israeli
here.
domestic politics has a huge part in that too.
It has a huge part in that also. But here's the thing. I don't think Trump is going to be good for Israel. I think that ultimately, Trump is a bully. And I see too many of my Jewish friends, it's like the kids that sit at the bully's lunch table in junior high school, right? That bully's not really friends with you. He just lets you sit there because you're laughing at his jokes and laughing as he pushes around other kids. I think when push comes to shove, if Donald Trump gets it into his mind that this is the greatest deal in the ever to be made, trust me, this is everybody's saying it. then we are in trouble here.
I
That's going to be hard.
still think that our so-called partners will in the end pull through and mess it all up. So
because that's the thing. We have to rely on, the number one savior of the Jewish people here is not Donald Trump. It's not that other guy that the Christians think it is. It's really become Mahmoud Abbas.
Yeah.
Like that's I pray for his health. I don't pray for much, but please keep Mahmoud Abbas healthy. God, please keep Mahmoud Abbas healthy, because we can always count on him to
miss
put
an
a
opportunity,
stick in the spokes of any kind of great ideas these other people are going to have. But Trump is unpredictable, and it scares me. Jared, we're going to send Jared over there, and I'm going to tell him he has to do it. And it's, our lives, Jewish lives and Palestinian lives in here are going to be, made an episode of The Apprentice. And
I'm still more hopeful. I still think, I think his statement on the Holocaust memorial thing, Elder of Zion had a great blog post on that, comparing that with Obama's statement. I think it was heartfelt. I think it was really heartfelt. And the point is, I think Obama said things because he had to say things, because he was always covering the fact that underneath he was resentful and hateful of Jews and Israel. I don't think Trump actually has to filter what he says, because I don't think he holds those negative views. But we'll see. I think, we're living in interesting times.
All the people that say Trump is a racist, I don't believe that one bit.
Not remotely.
Not remotely. Trump doesn't hate anyone because of their religion or the color of their skin. He has
competence,
one criteria,
success.
Not even competence. It's obvious he hires incompetent people to do things. Michael Flynn, he has one criteria, whether he likes you or hates you, and that's what you do for him. That's how you do you respect him? Do you show him the respect of the king? Are you going to bow down and kiss his ring? If you do, you're the greatest person in the world. If you don't, you're the failing New York Times. If you don't, you're Meryl Streep. You're an overrated actress. That's the two. It's not black people, white people, Jews, Arabs, people of color. It's people who kiss my ass and people who don't.
I'm sure that there's a filter for competence in there too. So
I don't know.
Because I don't know.
We've had the first 100 days there. He hasn't passed basically any legislative agenda of his. We've had a debacle after debacle there. You had the Michael Flynn thing.
Well, we'll wait and see.
We'll wait and see. 100 days.
We'll wait and see.
Agree.
No, but there's. We've got to wait and see what happens to this circuit court that keeps blocking everything he's trying to do. I mean, they really need to be reined in, and so those are the things. Hey, I think it's probably the jackhammers are probably telling us it's time that we need to close this out.
I hear
from
that.
my end.
First of all, listen to that, folks. If that's going through on the recorder, that's on the recording. That's an incredible sound. That is the sound of the building of the land of Israel here, and I think that's excellent. All right, Brian, we're not going to get to the things that, let me just throw this one in because I thought this was great. We hear the UN here in Israel. We're all, but the United Nations, we're sorry, it's against international law. We have an international legal body, the United Nations. That's the consensus will of the people of the world. Well, this last week, I have to mention this, United Nations voted to put Saudi Arabia on its Commission for the Empowerment of Women. And that's not an Onion article. I actually looked it up. I saw the press release. Commission on the Status of Women. The council elected by secret ballot 13 members of a 4-year term beginning at the first meeting of the Commission's 63rd, blah, 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 blah. And sure enough, this is on the UN's website, that the Commission for the Empowerment of Women includes such countries like the Congo, Kenya, where that has an 80% female genital mutilation statistic there. Iraq is on the Council for the Empowerment of Women.
Is Israel?
Israel's not. Israel, where women serve in the army, where we have female, fighter pilots, where I would take, I was looking around. My daughter had a thing at school. Any one of these moms could have kicked my butt. The moms that were born here in Israel and grew up here. Like, we have, women, we have probably the most pro woman, definitely in the Middle East, but I would say in the entire world.
Yeah.
But
easy to say.
Easy to say. Of course, everyone could make an argument. You cannot make any kind of argument that would say it would just be impossible and reveal you to just be, someone who is so unbelievably biased. No one could ever possibly say, who's great with tolerance for women? Saudi Arabia. We have something to learn from them about this in the empowerment of women. They'll force them to live in cloth bags and don't let them leave the house without a male companion. That just shows the ridiculous nature of the United Nations and how they don't matter. And it doesn't keep me up, 1 minute at night thinking, well, I am violating international law by being a Jew living in Judea.
Correct.
So, all right, Brian, happy Yom Ha'atzmaut. Next week is
big day.
Big day, and it's a big 2 days.
We have Yom HaZikaron before. We'll talk. Afterwards. We must talk about that transition. Yom HaZikaron to Yom Ha'atzmaut.
Okay, yeah, because it's really powerful here. Folks, if you enjoyed listening to this, I'm going to put this up on my YouTube channel, Reb Mottle. You can find me there.
Brian of London
puts it up there on his YouTube channel. You could follow me on Twitter. I'm Reb Mottle at Twitter. Brian of London on Twitter. This will also be, I'm going to put this out on my iTunes podcast and, everywhere. Complete media domination.
All right.
And we'll see you next week. All right, Brian, take care, man.
Bye.